Why does you stay in NRC is probably one of the biggest questions that I have whenever I have to witness the fact that they're getting repeatedly traumatized throughout the arcs of Twisted Wonderland. Or even if they're not being traumatized, they're not shown on screen. There's a lack of presence that comes from the player character themselves. And I think this is a problem because there's a necessary lack of like ambition when it comes to like the fact that in like just a few context clues, right? As you as a character, is that they're dropped into a new world and their journey is being another student where they're literally paired up with like the first years and they're buddies with the first years. So I think there's already that implicit connotation within the game that you as a character objectively is still somewhat of a teenager, like say they haven't really gone to college yet. That's why they're having this whole experience. Three things to set up before I go into my arguments. Firstly, what is the average use interest? Because I think use can really be on a spectrum. Like you can be the concept of like anybody can be Spider-Man, right? But I think I won't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of what degree a you might want because of the different variations that they have in the first place, right? But I do think that the interest of you, if they're still a student, right? If that's what the game is already implying, is that one, they want to study, maybe get their high school diploma, which if they haven't gotten it, then that's something that they want to strive to in order to get an education. Or if they already got the diploma, that means they want a degree. And that's why they've landed into NRC or why they even got into NRC in the first place. And I think the first analysis that comes in then is why exactly NRC is not necessarily a good option for you. While, sure, let's admit that NRC is a prestigious university and it's like considered one of the top schools when it comes to magic and arcane, right? I think the emphasis on magic is something that's important to take note on here because note that that this is not exactly a place that was built for magicless people in the first place. This is a place that was built for mages by mages insofar as like a lot of the degrees or even just the classes in NRC needs like for example like prerequisite um foundational knowledge of like magical herbs or magical elements, right? You need certain knowledge and subjects in order to excel in this school in the first place. And the second thing that comes with NRC is because of the fact that it's a top school, it's somewhat prestigious. You are just sought out after by the headmaster, right? It's rare for you to be able to get a purposeful pick, like be a nepo baby, unless you're really at the top of the top. I think this means then that a lot of average people, an average student in NRC, are really competitive. And this is a problem. This is bad because of the fact that you is one, a magicless student, secondly, still trying to get like a way to get a degree, and when your environment that you landed into you're not that familiar with is already super competitive, and secondly you need prerequisite knowledge of this world in the first place. But dude, you just came from another world. This is a bad problem for you because this means then that they have to keep up with like trying to stay on top of their studies, try to learn like the foundational history of the Twisted Wonderland, while their peers or classmates might already just be like 4 to 7 years, 6, 7 years ahead of them already, right? And so they have to tug it out, plus the fact that the canon timeline still exists in the first place. And I think even if it's possible that they can still tug it out, right? They can still try to keep themselves at the top of their game. I think the aftermath that you would have when you like come out of NRC is also quite narrow and limited because firstly, when you're already in a competitive environment, maybe it's a little bit hard for you to get a degree because a lot of it are really focused on magic specialization where it's not necessarily about the things that you could do with your hands physically, but it's about what you can do with your wand. And like, it's literally like the biggest liability of you. Like, they can't use magic, obviously. And I think the second thing that you need to take note here is that after their third year, right, they have to go into internships in their fourth year. You necessarily need to have connections and you need to have shown up for yourself on like a public stage. This is where like a plot point in book two is like Leona trying to showcase the Savannah Club boys before they go into internships, right? And when you are a magicless person, there are only few and limited scenarios where you can realistically do that in a school where it's really like magic specialized. And so to like to add all of that up, that is bad for you because there's already a lot of odds that are placed against them. Plus, again, the canon timeline where um they have to deal with trauma, they have to deal with the overplots and XYZ. Let's go on to then my first argument. Why exactly is the best option for you is to just get out of Sage Island? I think this could firstly happen around the timeline of book one, or maybe during book four, right? This is all scenarios that happen after trauma, and this is like a place where Crowley could necessarily compensate by getting you out of school. I think the first thing is that in Sage Island currently, there's really only two prestigious universities, which is NRC and RSA. While it's still unclear to us in the canon lore what RSA really looks like and how their admissions even look like, I think the fact is it's still a magic school. It's still one that is competitive. It's one that's considered really really good, and a lot of mages are upping onto it. Not to say that magicless people probably have a much more harder time accessing it, but I think what we have to take note here is that Sage Island is not necessarily completely landlocked. In fact, there are mirror travels, right? You can travel, teleport to other countries through a mirror, and that's shown many, many times whenever we do events in Twisted Wonderland. That is to imply then that it's pretty accessible if Crowley does actually provide for this. And I think Crowley does have somewhat of an incentive after book one or maybe books four, or even just in the prologue, to get you somewhere else other than NRC because duh, like this is a magicless person. Why are we placing them in a magic university in the first place, right? And so this is in fact in you's best interest because when you are already in scenario that's threatening like a bad scenario, it's probably best for you to get out of that in the first place. But even if it's not in their best interest to do so, I would argue that it's probably much more easier for you to find a sense of social mobility and therefore have a peace of mind. Because note, the urgency of the situation that they've been placed in is that they're placed in a new world. They don't know what this world is like. They have to study all these prerequisite foundational knowledge in order to even try to get a degree or education or even fit in to the standards of NRC in the first place. That is to say that if they do get out of the place and they do enroll in another school that accepts magically student is not necessarily magic specialization um heavy, that means then that on the principle this is really good for them because now they have a chance to breathe. Now they have a chance to be like, yes, I'm surrounded with people who are like me. I don't need to live up to the standards of mages in another place. And so for all of that being said and done, I'm really over time. Propose.